Here we go. Welcome, Average Joe Nation from around the globe. Props to you for staying up to date and keeping in the know. With fantasy football, man, very soon you'll reign. The knowledge that these three guys have, man, it is insane. Yeah, fantasy football talk hateful eight, they wear the crown. Hold it down. Pickle, Blackburn, and Trimboli, hold it down. Pulling up to the recording studio, we're getting loud. Getting ready, headphones on, red light go, break it down.
All right, welcome back to the Hateful Eight Fantasy Football Podcast with your host. I'm Pickle, and with me as always, to my left, your viewership's right, would be Blackburn.
That's right, that's me.
Directions are not always my strong suit. And then to my right, your left, if you're watching the show, it would be Trimboli.
What's going on?
So, today, we're dabbling into the wide receivers, or as they're better known in the NFL world, the divas of the NFL, unfortunately. So, that's today's main segment. If you are watching us on YouTube or on DATV, you'll be able to see the social media handles at the bottom. If you're just on the podcast side of it, they'll be within the links within the drop. Information-wise, you'll be able to follow us. But we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and as well as on YouTube as well. So let's go ahead and get into the first segment of today, Fantasy News and Notes, presented by Sleeper. Oh, my.
Fantasy News and Notes.
All right, Fantasy News and Notes presented by Sleeper. With fantasy football slowly ramping up, now's the time to ask your commissioner to switch you over to the correct platform to be playing on, which is Sleeper. They've got modern designs, infinite customization, support for redraft, dynasty, and keeper leagues. Make your switch to Sleeper, and you can download it on iOS as well as Android. Plus, they have the website as well if you're not able to get it on your mobile and you would prefer to play on your laptop or computer. So that's where we get all of our information from.
We need to get your Sleeper.
I'm telling you, I've got it. I just gotta get it put on the Apple.
My sound effect?
Yeah, it's on point.
It was on point last episode. So,
yeah.
First one out the gate. Gronk retires after 9 seasons with the Patriots. Let's see. I think I've got it. Yep. Hold on. Yeah, it's the end of the road for Gronk, or the Spike Gronk, I guess you could say it.
Smash, whatever.
Robo Gronk, it's all over.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but yeah, we got the fact with him. I feel bad because I think if he would have played an amount of time as like Jason Witten or some of these guys, I think he would have just blew the points and everything out of the water, like overall statistics. But for 9 seasons, and he didn't even play. I think there was only out of a 16-game season, he only played, I think, maybe 1 or 2 seasons in that 9 years that he actually played a full season.
Right. Yeah, he's hurt a lot. That was his problem.
I think he averaged just shy of 13 games a year for those 9 years.
So I know you had posted on Twitter a poll as to, shortly after this announcement came out, as to who's the greatest tight end of all time and who ended up winning. I know you had put like
Gronk.
Right.
Like it was like 58% said Gronk, which is crazy, but
I mean, it blew up. I mean, it was within like, I don't know how many votes it ended up being, but I mean, it was a pretty surprising enough. To me, anything above 55% is kind of a unanimous, in my opinion, for percentage-wise.
Well, he kind of changed how you look at a tight end. I mean, he was on and off the field. He was a character off the field, and when he's on the field, he was entertaining to watch. So, I mean, that's kind of why the public perspective on him is going to be high.
Right.
Or like a Tony Gonzalez, he's got a ton of stats, but he played for a lot longer.
yeah, he played for 17 years.
So
I mean, from an NFL standpoint, obviously, statistically, Tony Gonzalez is going to have better numbers. But like you said, the fact that he played so many, I mean, he almost doubled Gronk's career lengthwise. But when it comes to Canton, you're going to look at somebody who changed the game for that position, which we all agree. I think Gronk changed the position for the tight end. Overall, he's not just a blocker. He was also a freak athlete that he could outrun guys. Like, he could outrun the linebackers, but he would out-strengthen the safeties or corners. It just was a mismatch, whoever was with him. But ultimately, he's going to be in Canton. I'd be very surprised if he's not a first-ballot Hall of Fame guy, just because he's got the championships.
That's the key right there.
Right.
The rings.
Right. He's got the championships. He changed the position that he played in. And I just think overall, I mean, he just brought it. I mean, I know that this won't be factored into Canton, but he did factor in, like, human side of being like a person. Like he just wasn't like
Yeah.
you never heard about him. I mean, Gronk went out to different events. I mean, they named the football spiking Gronk for a reason. I mean, it's
Gronk's
just
smart.
I don't know. And then so I was kind of bummed to hear that he retired, but we all kind of saw the writing was on the wall, whether it was this year or next year was coming.
I'll never forget his commercial Typods.
Yeah.
That'll
I'm
be
not
sticking
really
in my
I'm
head.
not really that big a fan of Gronk. Like everybody was hyped up. I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
For fantasy purposes, I think it was like you just hoped that this was the year that he played 10 plus games because you knew if you got
Right.
that out of him, you had a top 5 tight
Well, if
end.
you
It was
take away
just
last year, I think if he retires last year, I
Right.
think it's even more praise for him
right,
because he ends on a high. He ends on a injured, plagued season. So
right. And then another big retirement. I mean, not so much for fantasy purposes, but overall for the NFL. Jordy Nelson retires after 10 seasons. Obviously, majority of it with the Packers, last year with the Raiders. He had visited, I believe, Seattle, and it just obviously didn't work out. I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall, whether it was the financial compensation that was offered to him or just overall he was like, hey, just probably time to go before I ruin anything else that I built up NFL career-wise. Because it was horrible last year for him.
it's hard to go to a rebuild team too when you're a veteran like
No,
that.
it's the Raiders too.
This is true.
They were trash last
Yeah.
year, except for Jared Cook.
Right. So, and then Doug Baldwin will have a sports hernia here early April. I guess he was dealing with that as well as he had like several different injuries that he was dealing with last year. And
Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
right, it explains a lot about Baldwin's lack of his normal like level of fantasy performance that you saw. But it was bad last year, and we kind of were like, okay, draft him late. Maybe we'll see him come in a couple weeks, and then it was just like you could just tell it was kind of like Greg Olsen. It took a couple weeks to get the ball rolling, and even then he was not 100% healthy. Like he even said, what was it last year when coming into the season?
He said he wasn't going to be 100%.
It was like he's like I'll be like
80.
80 or 85%. And you're just like, okay, well that's not good
And
to hear.
Tyler Lockett was top 15
Yeah.
fantasy wide receiver last
Yeah,
year.
Lockett, and Doug Baldwin. Good luck.
Right, and this
It's another surgery, another injury.
right,
Yeah.
and he's in that upper age-wise for wide receivers overall. So I mean, it's not the most pleasant thing to be. If you're a Doug Baldwin owner in Dynasty, you're probably like this is not good. But in a redraft, he might be somebody that you can draft at the back end, maybe in that rounds 12 through 14. If he drops that far, his name might
I don't
still
think
carry
he'll
him
drop
in.
that far. I could say maybe mid rounds, 7, 8, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
his name alone will carry value.
Right.
Okay.
And
Well,
it could be a late steal. It just depends.
he's going to be somebody you're going to have to stash and wait and see how he does post-surgery and everything. So, and then Marquise Lee expected back late in the preseason. We watched the initial when we were at our draft last year there. We saw the injury with Marquise Lee, and we were just like, you saw it coming. You're just like, oh, geez. I mean, the leg just broke, and you're just like, yep, that's probably not a good idea. So,
Yeah.
so he's apparently going to be back for preseason. I will tell you, there's a lot of praise coming out of the Jags organization right now for Westbrook, as that he might be the number one coming into this season for Nick Foles, which is great because Nick Foles is just going to heave the ball down the field all day. So,
Well, I mean, they finally got a quarterback who's pretty accurate.
right. I will tell you, though, the Jags would be a surprise team if they reach up and take one of these big-name tight ends in this first round. He could be one of those tight ends that breaks the mold like an Evan Ingram their rookie year, where they're just because of the volume in that offense, they might be somebody relevant. Because statistically, as we saw, most of the time, rookie tight ends are not fantasy relevant unless they happen to land on a gold mine.
Well, in Fournette's situation, so up and down, you don't know if he's going to get he's been in the past, all the carries for that offense.
Right.
You know, I don't think it's going to be just run first anymore.
And there's still rumor that he might even be on the trade block. He might not even be a Jacksonville
I know.
Jaguar come start of the season.
Right. Well, I've seen some of his social media posts saying that they're doubting me, and that's fine, and all this other I mean, it might be something just to motivate him. It might be writing on the wall that he knows something's coming down the pike.
Didn't last year they take all the incentives out of his contract?
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
He just feels like he's going to end up in Oakland. That's just what it feels like.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be. Who knows? At this point, they need a running back because Marshawn gave him a nice little, I'll let you guys know after the NFL draft, which helps everybody, mind you.
Yeah, but do you expect anything less from Marshawn?
No, Marshawn knows what he's doing at this very point. He's just being Marshawn and keeping some sort of media hype on himself in some fashion. But
At this point, he's just a role player anyway. He's no longer a feature
no,
back.
And then Darius Geis expected to be a full participant for training camp, which is a good thing for the Redskins. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, they brought in Adrian Peterson, and that's writing on the wall that Geis is not going to be ready, or that Geis is not going to be a feature back.
No,
That's
Geis
fine.
is-
If you want to draft that way,
No,
more power to you.
Geis will be the feature back. It's just AP's a spell guy, plus he's insurance.
Right. And I hate to say, it's kind of like last year's Dalvin Cook situation where we were all concerned because Dalvin Cook was coming off of a major injury, and they brought in Latavius Murray. They got rid of Jerick McKinnon. So we're like, okay, so it's going to be we had talked about it was going to be Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook in a 50-50, some sort of split. Well, for the first couple games, it was like that. But by game 4, it was Dalvin Cook's baby, and he took off and ran with it. And Latavius Murray had
Literally.
right.
Yeah.
There you go. Latavius Murray had his games where he was fantasy relevant, but Dalvin Cook was the main back, and I think that's what you're going to see in Darius Geis there in Washington because
Well, head coach Jay Gruden already said that he's going to be a 3-down back. He catches the ball. He's going to do everything.
right now Chris Thompson, he's the one that has like the asterisk on it because he's not. They just signed Adrian Peterson, which tells me they want to have him as insurance if nothing else. But Chris Thompson, like you said, with Darius Geis being a potential 3-down back, where does Chris Thompson fit into this whole mix?
He'll fit in.
He's still a passing back.
Yeah, on third downs, you'll see Geis and Chris Thompson back here.
What scares me for Geis is AP is going to probably eat up his goal line touches
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
if they even get to the goal line this year. I'm sorry,
Depends
that
on
offense
no.
is scaring me.
It just depends on who the quarterback is.
This is very true. The NFL draft is very important for the Washington Redskins this year, whether that's for trading purposes to get somebody like Rosen or to get one of these top quarterbacks in the draft.
Well, the Cardinals want a first-round pick. The Chargers offered him a second already, and they declined.
I know New England his name is thrown into the mix for Rosen because they want an heir to Brady, and Belichick feels like he's somebody that he could mold into the next Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's Chargers, Giants, Washington, and Patriots.
Right.
Are the ones that
I
are.
don't even think it's a big loss for Arizona if they don't get rid of Rosen. I wouldn't get rid of him for nothing less than a first rounder.
Yeah,
What are you paying him? Nothing. He's still on a rookie contract.
Right.
You can still bring in Murray.
right.
Yeah.
To me, if you're really just wanting to cut ties with Rosen and you're the Arizona Cardinals, you take the highest bidder, whether that's a second round or a third and a fifth or something like. You take something, but
I would give him a second round this year and a conditional pick based on his production for
Right.
next year. That could be a first-round pick.
I think the Chargers have the right idea with offering him a second. I think Rosen in the right system could be relevant in the NFL purposes if he's given an opportunity in the right offensive style, right coaching style. But to me, he's not worth a first-round pick right now. Like, to me personally.
Well, if he was coming out of the draft this year, if Rosen was in this draft class, he'd be probably the second or third pick, the quarterback.
Yeah.
I just think you lose leverage if you are willing to sacrifice just a second round pick for him. I think you hold on to him, still draft how they were going to plan on drafting, and then you see what's going to happen with injuries. Rosen's going to be a hot commodity. It's just what team's going to pull the trigger.
They want to get rid of him before.
The draft or on draft day.
Now, I get what they want. I get what they want to do. Now, New England's a team that I could see them doing this. This is a pure New England move.
They have 11 picks in the draft.
And I think they're like most of them are in the first like 3 or 4 rounds.
Yeah, they got 3 seconds and like 3 thirds or something like that.
They could
package 2 seconds and a third, and I think Cardinals could jump on that.
There you go. Thank you, Tom Brady. Here's your backup.
Yeah.
Josh Rosen. Here's the GOAT. Enjoy learning how to be a quarterback from him. So.
And what's your ring size? Because we'll
Right.
need it by the end of the year.
Right. Just ask Josh Gordon. He's got his, so he didn't even have to play very much this year. So, now signings. This one's a big one. We talked about it last week. It kind of came in initially that he was going to sign. We didn't have any official confirmation numbers and everything, but there was potentially it sounded like there was a potential, maybe a flip of him going to New England potentially once Gronk's name was thrown out that he was retiring. But I think the Saints, overall offensive-wise, and the potential for him, I think he liked what he saw with the creativity out of that offense.
Well, they paid up, too. I mean,
This is also true.
2-year, 15.5, that's pretty good for
Yeah. For a guy who is on the back end of his career.
he's in the upper 20s.
This is probably his last big deal, honestly, and I think that's what he was going for.
But, I mean, hey, that's a high-powered offense.
Yeah.
With Drew Brees. I think he's going to be a good weapon for them.
He's probably going to be the number 3 receiving target within that offense behind Michael Thomas and Kamara in some fashion. because Kamara has been a leader in that reception group out above Michael Thomas as well. And now that you got Latavius Murray, who is set in a box of being the run first only guy, and then you got Kamara, who's going to be, I mean, I think Kamara can be a chameleon type where he can be a running back through the tackles as well as the pass catching back, which I'm telling you right now, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm hearing about it. I think Kamara, he might be the number 2 guy by the end of the year, like running back wise. Just what they're wanting to do with this offense, just high flying purposes. So, and then we didn't have any. I don't think we had any traded. We didn't have anybody big name wise that was released overall. But before we go too far into the next segment, I just want to do. There's 3 points I want to take care of. One, we want to give you guys a shout out at AstroTurf, Dan Isaac specifically, for giving us the turf piece that you see on the front of the desk. We appreciate them. They are the main retailer sellers in AstroTurf for like high school, college, NFL even. And they do not just football, but baseball and as well as like soccer. So big things from them. We appreciate them sending that for the new table setup.
Yeah, much appreciated.
And then also people had been asking about who does our intro and outro, the rap and everything. So I want to give him a proper shout out. It's Quiet Comedian. He's on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as on YouTube. For you guys on YouTube and on the podcast side, I'll have the links within the information so you can follow him. Keep what he's doing. He's an up-and-coming rapper that's going to probably eventually take over doing some big things because, as you hear, I mean, he just freestyles this on the fly and has it. It's like, hey, I got a question. I literally tell him, I need a fantasy football intro, something cool. Here's our names. Here's the name of the podcast handle. Make it work. And within 24 hours, he's got something just out of nowhere. So we appreciate him doing that as well. And then we have an iTunes review. I figured we can we hadn't gotten one, or we hadn't talked about one, I should say, in a while. So let's see what we got here. Pulling this up. My bad. I thought I had it pulled up. All right. So this is from Big Blue Cat 12 on iTunes. It says, the crew at the Hateful Eight are great fantasy minds. Great show with a lot of useful information. Helped me win a few championships last year. So appreciate the feedback. Give us a 5-star review on that one. So
yeah, if you're following the podcast, also check out the articles. These guys are putting in a ton of work.
Yeah. And we love the feedback, whether it's positive, negative, whatever you guys got, we like to hear it regardless.
True.
Whatever we can do to help you win that championship. So.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the final segment today, the way too early rankings for the wide receivers.
Why are the divas the wide receivers? Way too early rankings. Wide receivers.
All right, way too early rankings, wide receivers, presented by Trophy Smack. They have over 1,000 different unique fantasy trophy combinations. They also have fantasy rings, and most recently they added the fantasy football championship belts.
Get that belt.
Yeah, we got to get one of those for here.
Yeah.
So
slinging over my shoulder every show.
You got to win it.
Ooh, that's tough.
I feel like there was a little jab in there.
I know. I'm always the bridesmaid, never the bride in this.
You're like we talked about this, I think, last year. You're like the Buffalo Bills of the 90s. You get right there to the doorstep, but the door gets shut right in your face.
I can get to the game.
I just don't
wear the ring.
participate in the game, but I get there. So, but if you head over to TrophySmack.com, you can use our promo code TH8FF. Get yourself a free championship ring with the purchase of any trophy. So, all right. First, guys, we're going to talk about, obviously, the wide receiver. So we got some consensus rankings. These should be pretty, surprisingly enough, I'm surprised we didn't have as much, what do you want to call it, as different opinion-wise. First two guys.
I think we do.
Well,
Do we? Or did I look at that? Yeah, we apparently do. I apparently looked at only the first guy.
Well, once you get past the top 13 here, it will definitely change. Because that's where the nit and gritty is with these guys. 'Cause there's a lot of guys that are kind of alike, and it's who do you like more, what offense do you like more, what quarterback do you like throwing the ball to them. So.
All right. So number one consensus across the board, the only one we apparently have that I can see initially. DeAndre Hopkins coming in at 1 across the board with an ADP for people, as we talked about last week, average draft position. So in mock drafts, where he's currently going at the 107. So he is literally in a 12-man league, right about dead center or a little bit past the first number, the middle point. So still, to me, he's quarterback proof. He's one of those guys that is, as we would say, quarterback proof that we've talked about last year, and we've talked about off show that when it comes to a wide receiver, a lot of it is relying upon the quarterback and how well the guy distributes the ball, obviously. But as you talked about it, who was the quarterbacks last year or 2 years ago.
Well, yeah, luckily he's got Deshaun Watson, who's a pretty decent quarterback. But a couple years ago, he had Tom Savage throwing him the ball, and he was still #1 wide receiver.
Well, I always harp on red zone because that's where I think you're going to get the majority of your touchdowns at. He's a big factor in that offense in the red zone. And see, that's what hurts Julio sometimes is he's not as big of a factor in the red zone.
Which he should be.
Right, he absolutely should be, but that's what knocks him out of the top 5 sometimes at the end of the year.
Or he just doesn't catch a touchdown till week 7.
Right.
Well, it is what it is. I think the biggest thing with Hopkins for me is the offense is continuing to evolve, and I think that they're going to get hopefully a better running back in there, whether that's I just drew a blank on who the guy was. Not Lamar Miller, but D'Onta Foreman, because Blue is not in the offense. He's not been signed back, so they're not planning on bringing him back as of right now. So to me, ultimately, you're going to have an offensive running back that's going to be a little bit more flexible, not just a pass catcher or not just a run through the tackles, but it can catch out of the backfield. And I think overall the fact of having Kiki Kuti and a healthy Will Fuller, and if they go get one of these tight ends in the draft potentially.
Yeah, I think that's what they really need is one of these big tight ends.
Yeah.
That's what they're missing.
I'd love to see a full year of Will Fuller healthy.
Yeah, because Lamar Miller came on strong toward the end of the year last year, and that offense was rolling. And I like the continuity between Hopkins and
Watson.
Watson's only getting better, and the more he gets comfortable in that offense, the more Hopkins' numbers are going to go up.
Absolutely.
And I think it helps having opposite. I mean, obviously, as we pointed out, Hopkins still can be the #1 wide receiver overall in fantasy without having a good quarterback as well as complementary wide receivers. But I think that elevates his ability because if Will Fuller is continuing to go take the top off, and I think Kiki Kuti is going to be your inside slot guy that's going to be able to kind of take the possession receptions. But to me, ultimately, Hopkins is still the main guy.
Yeah, he's the big play and red zone guy. So.
Well, and trust goes into this because ask Amari Cooper about that. You know, Carr didn't trust him at all in Oakland. That's why his numbers started to go down because he was dropping everything. He goes over to Dallas. He's got a huge – Prescott trusts him again. His numbers go back up. Hopkins is definitely the #1 pick for Watson, his #1 look, and he trusts him completely.
Yep.
True. All right, #2 consensus. I've got him – myself and Triboli's got him at 2. Blackburn's got him at 3, so not a big difference. But Devonta Adams coming in at #2. He's got a 109 ADP, so starting towards the back end of that first round, wide receiver wise. To me, the fact that they signed Geronimo Allison back is a help. Now, my only concern, and is could potentially move him down, is we're not sure what the offense looks like with Matt LaFleur now as the main offensive guru in that. Now, I know it's still, let's be honest, it's still Aaron Rodgers' offense, and he's still going to do what he wants to do.
Yep.
We've seen, even with a veteran coach that he's been with for pretty much his whole career, Mike McCarthy, he pretty much told him, I'm going to do what I want to do. Now
Rodgers runs his own plays.
Right. Well, who was it? I think it was when we had MVS, we talked about it off air. He said a lot of times inside like the 2 minutes, he said it was pretty much like McCarthy was like, here you go, Aaron, it's your team, and let it run. And he said, and those were the biggest times that they were successful was just Aaron Rodgers' ability to, on the fly, and he said, we'd come to the huddle, he'd be like, all right, you run this route, you run this route, you run this route. Like there wasn't no like play call name. It was just
like
you go do
Sandlot
it.
football.
Right.
I mean, the greats can do that. Peyton Manning did the same thing.
So I think ultimately, I think bringing in the Geronimo Allison, maybe one of these tier 2 group within their own offense, wide receivers, so MVS, Equano St. Brown, and some of these other guys, maybe they elevate a little bit now to get in here, as well as Jimmy Graham. Maybe hopefully does something this year, but
they need to work on offensive line because Rodgers was getting hit a lot last year.
Right, and I think that kind of hurt his overall fantasy performance last year, just because one, he got hurt early, and he was just lingering with that injury all year.
I mean, he was lucky he didn't get really
And if they get a run game going, I think it only bumps Adams up.
Well, they said that LaFleur said they're going to do a running back by committee there.
Right. Well, I just mean in general. If the running game in general is successful, that's going to open up passing lanes.
Yeah.
So.
But
Plus, Adams is a guy that, like you said, he can get his own plays.
Right. He's kind of in that Hopkins group where when Rodgers went down, it was Hundley and whoever else that came in there that year, and he still was successful.
He was still getting like 17 points.
So he's kind of, I think he's also in that group of quarterback proof. So I'm not concerned so much with him as much as I'm more so concerned how much LaFleur is going to install of his offense versus letting Aaron Rodgers do his thing. So. And then #3 consensus, Michael Thomas coming in. I've got him at 3. You guys have got him at 4. So we're still pretty close in the number-wise
still
overall.
Top 5 guy.
Yeah.
and then he's at the last pick of the first round at 112. So he's the final pick in a 12-man league in that first round. So, which I think that's pretty comparable where he should be. He's right in that. He's a first-round wide receiver in my opinion, but I would not be surprised if he drops to an early second-round pick, just based on with Jared Cook's name now being thrown into the mix and people possibly being concerned of his and Kamara. I know.
I don't think it matters. He was on a record-setting pace for a while there last year at the first half of the season.
What I like about Michael Thomas is he doesn't have to have just touchdowns to be a top 5 guy.
Right.
Because really he only had 9. He wasn't even in double digits.
No.
He still finished, 6, I think?
Yeah, he was wide receiver 6.
So, I mean, that's showing that he's a consistent guy who's getting the ball a ton. He's targeted
his
a lot.
receptions were
He had
ridiculous.
170, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think that the fact that they're going to try to be more pass related, I think they're going to start running, like being more pass heavy this year. I think we saw that very much early on without Mark Ingram last year, and we talked about that. Kamara's first 4 games is going to be a true tale is what this offense is going to be in 2019 because they're not going to probably bring back Mark Ingram. And
he was averaging 35 points a game.
I mean, I don't have the numbers for Kamara, but overall, I mean, Kamara was getting fed both in the run game but also in the passing game, and the offense was throwing the ball a lot in those first 4 games, and then it just kind of coasted the rest of the year with running and throwing, which is what we figured we were going to see once Ingram got back. So we'll see. I do agree. I think Michael Thomas could end up being one of those guys, depending on how these 2 top guys we talked about, Adams and Hopkins, does. Michael Thomas is in that top 3 talk. Now, I don't know if he is quarterback proof is the only reason why I think at this point, I can't put him any higher than 3. That's why I have those 2 guys at 1 and 2, just because I think they're both quarterback proof. Michael Thomas, to me, we've not seen it without Drew Brees, so we don't know if he's quarterback proof. We've seen with these other 2 guys, Adams and Hopkins, can be the guy still without a good quarterback. So.
I don't even think that matters. I think Kamara and him are the 2 main options there, even with Jared Cook there.
Yep.
So, and then number 4, Julio Jones, 110. So he's going 2 picks ahead of Michael Thomas. I've got him at 4, and I'm in the middle of you guys.
We're literally 3, 4, 5.
Right. So still about the same overall. I agree. I think he is definitely a top 5 wide receiver, and I think that the offense is just going to get. I think it's going to change a little bit because I think you don't have Tevin Coleman, and to me, Ito Smith. People are like, oh well, Ito Smith's just going to fall right into that Tevin Coleman role. No. Tevin Coleman was a pass catching back that was. He was a flexible guy in the sense like he could be between the tackles, but he also was really efficient in being the pass catcher. And Devonta Freeman is very much the we won't call it like the between the tackles guy. So, but he can catch as well. But to me, Ito Smith is in a box like Latavius Murray. It's old school grind down the field. He's going to be one that's going to get the tough yards, I guess.
Well, a couple of years ago when the Falcons went to the Super Bowl, it was the Devonta Freeman show in the backfield, and they passed a lot to Julio.
Right.
And now they got Ridley.
Right.
Austin Hooper stepped it up.
Right.
So I think they're going to go back to the aerial attack.
Yeah, because I think Freeman's going to be hurt. This injury is going to linger for him. It's going to be all year kind of thing. I think they're going to be forced to pass, and that's why you saw all their numbers go up. Ridley's, Hooper's, and Jones at the end of the year.
And even if he does Freeman play, he's not going to be able to carry that all season by himself.
No, so that's why I think Ito Smith's going to factor into like the more you want to call them like the short yardage plays or maybe even potentially goal line plays, and I think that's why a lot of people are, I guess, are fading on Devonta Freeman this year. They're like, oh, well, I know initially people are like, well, Tevin Coleman's not there, so he should be getting a ton of carries, touches, whatever. But on the flip side, like you guys both said, the health of Freeman, he has proven that he can't stay healthy for an entire season over his career so far. He's never been like that bill of health guy that you're like, oh, yeah, he'll play 16 games, no problem. I mean, he's had concussions. He's had leg injuries. I mean, it's just constant with him that he's
the Doug Baldwin of the running backs.
Right.
Boom.
There you go. I like that analogy. I like that analogy. That was a good comp. So
thought of that all by myself.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so Julio Jones, I think it's safe to say at this point, unless something changes and they go get another big one of these big wide receivers in the draft, ultimately I think he's going to be receiving. What did he end up? Because he was
5 last year.
5, and he didn't have a whole lot of touchdowns through. How many games was it?
7 before he had his first one.
He still finished 5. So if that tells you anything, the volume's always there. It's just if Julio can, to me, Julio is the one in this mix that could potentially be a 1 or 2 by the end of the year if the touchdowns are there early.
It was once Devonta Freeman went out on IR, they started throwing the ball more. And that's when Julio flourished.
True.
Julio's what gives me all the gray hairs. I draft him so early, and then you just want the touchdowns, and they're not there till the end.
Right?
Well, hopefully he gets the touchdowns early and often this year to hold that top 5 spot. But
Well, it better because talks of paying him $50 million guaranteed.
this is also true. All right, then number 5 consensus, Odell Beckham Jr., new wide receiver for Cleveland Browns at 201 ADP. I've got him at 5, so is Trimboli, and then Blackburn's got him at 6, so still pretty comparable where we got him.
It's OBJ, man.
Right.
Yeah.
I think my only concern with him is the new offense, because they do have so many weapons, and they have a good quarterback. That's my biggest concern with him, is how much volume we're going to see. I still think he's going to have touchdowns. I just think that the overall targets and receptions is going to be the biggest thing, because I think him coming in actually helps Landry a little bit more. But I think
Well, it opens up everybody because now you can't double cover people.
right, Njoku, Nick Chubb, if Kareem Hunt's there in the back half of the season, I just think that
Callaway.
I mean, there's guys there, and I think that's what we're looking at, and I think that's what he got frustrated in. Obviously, the quarterback was a little bit less to the par play-wise,
Right.
but
Look, you guys can crack on Eli all you want. Eli's a good quarterback. The
Right.
offensive line was the hottest of the hot garbage last year.
it was. Man, it was bad. I mean, and then to the point that they just – I mean, it was like a rotating, like one of those doors at a hotel. It was just continuing spinning.
I mean, OBJ
Just go through.
He had 124 targets last year.
And he didn't play the whole season.
No,
So
he missed like 4 games.
I just hope that for his sake that he doesn't get frustrated when he's not getting the ball on every play. And that's my concern.
That's what I'm waiting for. Is when he gets frustrated, he's working on Baker's nerves. Then what's going to happen?
Right. I hope Baker has enough. I mean, Baker has kind of a persona and attitude about him that he kind of carries himself differently than some of these younger quarterbacks when they first come into the league. I'm hoping that Baker has enough, like, how do you want to call it? Like, he just has enough to be able to tell and speak up and say, hey, this is my team. You're new here. You're my wide receiver. I'm the quarterback. I'm the general on the field. I'll throw you the ball when I think you're open. I'm not just going to throw the ball to you just to throw the ball.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, Landry, they said he was a headache in Miami. He's been pretty good so far in Cleveland, at least on the headache side, like
Well,
the egos.
you know why? Because he was the main wide receiver.
This is true.
I get that, but he was recruiting OBJ, and he wanted him
Well,
back.
they were college teammates. They're best friends. You know, that's all well and great. But when the season happens and one's getting more targets than the other and one's outshining the other, that's when we're going to see some beef.
I think
somewhere.
winning might help a little. This now, if they're not winning, like I said, I think last show, yes, I'm gonna totally buy into these egos are gonna take over.
So, all right. And then number 6, Tyreek Hill at 202 ADP. I've got him at the lowest at 11. Blackburn's got him at 2, and Trimboli's got him at 8.
We are
So
all over on him.
this is the first guy that I see that we are way high and way low on. So
This doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, I understand why you guys have him ranked lower because of all this legal trouble, but he's not in legal trouble right now.
true.
So as of right now, I got him as my number 2. He finished wide receiver 1 last year with 137 targets. I think he ranked 12th in targets overall. And he finished the number 1 wide receiver with 284 points.
I think my concern, at least, I mean, you can speak to why you've got him ranked lower, but to me, part of it is the concern of the investigation or lack thereof. Like the NFL is doing their due diligence and they're taking their time and they're waiting for the legal side of it to come through and everything, which is fine. I'm just worried more so of the year 2 Mahomes situation where people are going to say, hey, and it's not going to affect Mahomes so much because he can throw it to whoever. My concern is that teams are going to be like, okay, we're going to see the coverage, we're going to see the movement, we're going to see the pre-snap look. Now we know what Tyreek Hill is going to be doing out there with Patrick Mahomes. I'll probably end up moving him up as long as everything stays the way it is and he's not in trouble.
Well, yeah, obviously if he's in trouble, I'm going to drop him. But
Right.
Well, even we all think Mahomes is going to take a little bit of a regression, right?
Right.
No.
50 touchdowns. You think he's going to throw that again?
No, but I don't think he's going to be under 40.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what I think
Still,
we talked
but-
about.
So that's what I'm saying. So the regression here is Tyreek Hill's got to have a little bit of regression then. Maybe. I just
Yeah,
see
I
it.
mean,
You know,
yeah.
I see that's where I see him at. And he's a boomer bust guy. We know that. He's got the big play in him. And it's there. And if it's there consistently like it was last year, then he's going to be a top 5
Well,
guy.
I think
he's
I think
not
the reason
gonna
it
be
was
there.
I think the reason it was boomer bust the past couple of years is because they had Alex Smith as quarterback.
That is
now
true.
you got a quarterback that can sling it like Mahomes, and he's got the green light too. Nobody can run with Tyreek Hill.
No, but let's see. I want to know what Damian Williams is going to be like out of that backfield. If he can show, can be the Hunt or just a version of him? even a lesser version, I think the offense is going to be just like it was last year. But if he
Yeah.
struggles at all,
Yeah, but
that's going to hurt
Carlos
everywhere else,
Hyde's going to be in the mix too now, which is
Yeah.
which is not exciting at all.
No.
no, because he's going to start over Damian Williams.
Eventually, I have a feeling he will be. If everything goes according, because they brought him in for a reason, and I think it's because, as we've said, Andy Reid loves a two-back set. Now, he likes having a main, as well, if you want to call it the main back, but the main back is like 55 to 60% of the snaps and carries, where the backup is in that 30 to 40 range. So they're still relevant as an RB, as the running back 2 on the team.
Well, didn't they cut Spencer Ware?
No, they didn't cut him. They just didn't re-sign him. But still, he's not coming back.
Because Spencer Ware and Williams, they could have been the same type of player.
Right.
Run the same. The offense could have just
Right.
When they
going.
pay-
That makes more sense to me than Hyde does.
exactly.
Now,
That's
obviously,
what,
I'm not
that's
getting
what
paid to
scares
make
me.
those decisions.
Well, that's
but
what scares me about Damian.
Right. I agree with you. The fact that they paid Damian Williams before the season ended last year over Spencer Ware tells me that we all knew that the writing was on the wall. Spencer Ware was not going to be back in Kansas City for this year. Then there was rumors that they were going out and looking for a running back. So I'm like, okay, who's the running backs out there? Maybe a Yeldon, somebody like a Tevin Coleman, somebody who could potentially be a nice comparable back to Damian Williams. And then it's like Carlos Hyde to Kansas City. And you're like, what?
Well, 2 reasons on that. One, they signed Damian Williams to have him as insurance or to make sure
I agree.
they had a
I
running
agree.
back. They
True.
wanted to make sure, if anything,
And he's younger.
they had somebody that knew their style.
Right.
Carlos Hyde's only making like 4-point-some million a season. I mean,
Right.
it's dirt cheap for a starting running back.
This is true. I'm concerned what we're going to see out of the offense overall. Like you said, it's going to be Tyreek Hill's success rate is going to be over. What do you want to call it? It's going to be in relation to Damian Williams, Travis Kelce, and some of these other guys, and how much regression we see out of Mahomes overall.
At
least for me.
I just think it's going to be to be continued from last year.
All
They're
right.
just going to keep rolling.
So he's currently at 202, which is not a bad spot if you got him in that top 5 spot to be drafting wise.
I don't mean to harp on this, but another reason why is their defense. They lost Justin Houston and D Ford.
Yeah.
they're going to have to score some points on offense. to keep
Exactly,
up.
exactly. They're going to have to score to win the game,
Right.
and instead of relying on their defense.
This is true. I guess
You know,
that's a
you
good way to
have to
put it.
score the win to get.
You have to put
I
points
get
on
it,
the
but
board.
you know what I'm saying. They're going to have
No,
to.
I'm
They're going to
just
have to
messing with
outs. Okay, whatever.
I get what you're saying.
No, I understand. I think their defense was bad last year, and we saw the production, we saw the offense, and they just got even worse. They didn't bring any big-name pass rusher in. They didn't update or upgrade their secondary.
No, they lost Eric Berry. They lost Justin Houston.
I mean,
and
they put
lost D
Tyrann
Ford.
Mathieu, but that's about it.
Well, they're the new age team right now. This is the way the NFL wants it. They want high-powered offenses, and they want a lot of points.
And a
That's-
recycled defense
I guess.
That's
but they-
evident of the
trade.
pass interference calls.
This is true, which is going to be interesting now that they implemented that post.
So
Anywho,
Number 7, Juju Smith-Schuster. I've got him at 6. Trimboy's got him at 7, and Blackburn's got him at 11. He's got a 205 ADP at the moment. So since we're close and yours is a little bit on the farther end of the spectrum, are you just not buying into the Pittsburgh offense without AB, or you just think that because he's the one, now we might see some better coverage against him and he might struggle?
absolutely. I don't think Pittsburgh's offense is going to miss a beat. I think Connor is going to be great. It's going to force Washington and Moncrief that he's going to step right in. But Juju Smith-Schuster is no Antonio Brown.
No.
And he's going to face the best corners that they got on those teams, and I just don't think he's going to do that well against it. He was great being the number 2 guy going up against the number 2 or 3
Right.
corner, but how's he going to be being the number 1?
Well, to me, I'm hoping. Now, I'm not giving too much. I don't want to give too much credit to the offensive minds in Pittsburgh, but I'm hoping that with bringing in Moncrief, that they put him on the outside and they put Washington on the outside and they keep Juju in that slot spot, which is where he was successful, and kind of do like what Keenan Allen does in the Chargers offense, where you just move him in, and then if they want to put their best corner in the slot, great. If they don't, then you've got the second or third best corner on the team with Juju Smith-Schuster, which is essentially what we're going to see, what we saw last year. So
Right.
That's what I'm hoping that Pittsburgh is going to figure out. But ultimately, if they put Juju, like you said, if they put him on the outside to be where Antonio Brown was solid on the outside, I could see him being in that 9 to 10 range potentially just because of the coverage overall. If he sees favorable coverage, I think we could see him in that top 5 potentially. But if he's dealing with double coverage every play on the outside, then I agree with you. I think we could see something towards the back end of that like 9-10 spot for wide receivers.
I agree with you both.
Yeah.
I think it's Washington, Moncrief are going to decide on Juju's success, and also I think it's going to be you can't replace Antonio. There's definitely concerns there.
Right.
You know, he opened up a ton of passing windows for
Well, I think
Juju.
the success of Juju is what made Pittsburgh think that he can replace Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
But it's two different receivers.
Right.
Oh, I agree.
All right, number 8, T.Y. Hilton, 303 ADP. So the first part of that third round, and then we've got myself and Blackburn got him at 7 across the board, and Trimboli's got him at 10. So why do you have him at the back end of the wide receiver ones?
To me, it's still health related.
Like for him or for Luck?
Him and or Luck.
Okay.
But that offense in general. Listen, I'm starting to slowly buy into it. I like Hilton. I just think there's a lot of weapons there. Hilton, I mean, with Funches now in, Ebron's a huge target monster in the red zone.
And you got Funches, obviously, like you said, right?
Yeah, and then whoever they decide to play out of the backfield, if it's Mack, you still got Mack. I don't know, just a lot of mouths to feed there, and that's why I dropped Hilton down just a tad bit.
What did he have last year as the wide receiver?
He finished wide receiver 14.
Okay, so
But he started off slow.
right, it was towards the middle to back half of the season when he started like booming.
About week 7, he was getting I think there was 3 weeks in a row where he had 2 touchdowns a game for 3 weeks straight.
I think that's when Luck decided he can finally air it out too.
Yeah,
Possibly.
because he was the least sacked quarterback last year, Andrew Luck. That offensive line really
It was on point. They invested a lot of draft capital and off-season work into making it because, as we talked about, that was the big thing was Andrew Luck's health. If they could keep him upright and ready to go for all 16 or whatever games, they were going to be okay. It was just we were concerned that if they had an offensive line similar to Seattle and or the Giants, we were concerned that Luck wasn't going to make it out of the first half of the season.
Well, look, if you draft a quarterback first overall like they did with Luck, you better protect him.
Right.
Because we've seen what happened the year he didn't play.
Right. It was a bad offense and a bad defense. So, now number 9, Antonio Brown, 207 on the ADP side of things. So still, he's right around Juju Smith-Schuster, 205 for Juju. Antonio's at 207, so pretty close. I think everybody's kind of on the same board or same side of things. They think they're probably going to be drafted about the same. But I've got him at 8. Trimboli's got him the highest at 6, and Blackburn's got him the lowest at 13. So I think I'm in the middle spot because I'm still waiting to see what they do draft-wise, and that's why it's this way too early rankings. Depending on what they do through the draft, if they bring in like one of these Metcalf or any of these big-name wide receivers in the draft, I think could help Antonio Brown. But ultimately, I think I could be wrong. I mean, you can speak on your reasoning as to why you have him at 13. I'm assuming because it's the Raiders at this point.
Well, it's not just the Raiders, but we watched this happen with Amari Cooper.
Right.
A couple years ago, Amari Cooper was Pro Bowl receiver.
Right.
He got lost in translation. There's no run game in Oakland, really. The offensive line's not the greatest. And we watched it last year specifically. The first half of the year, Amari Cooper was nowhere to be found. He gets traded to Dallas, and he blows up.
Right.
I don't think Antonio Brown's going to have the same success in Oakland that he did in Pittsburgh.
Right. I mean,
He's going to be strictly volume-based. If he doesn't have the volume, then his numbers are going to drop tremendously because I know the touchdowns aren't going to be there.
No, they're not.
So.
Right.
And that's why I have him a little bit, ranked a little bit lower right now.
Right now, I've only got him ranked as high because really, I hate saying this, but it is name-based at the moment. I want to see what they do with the running back, what they do with the draft, and
Right.
then see how the offense is going to play out before I officially give him my ranking. But, yeah, he's the guy that I'm not as excited about.
Yeah, I think he's the one out of this whole group at this point that could potentially skyrocket to maybe in that top 6 potentially, but also like what you have him at where he could be potentially at the back end of that wide receiver 1 talk. And it all depends on what they do and what they look like in the offseason. I mean, in volume alone, he's going to have it, but like you said, touchdowns is going to be the far in between, and that's the biggest concern with him. But we saw Julio be successful without the touchdowns for the first couple games, but once he turned it on, what was it, week 8 or whatever, he was getting two touchdowns, or he was getting a touchdown to 2 touchdowns every game, and that's what kind of elevated him into that top 5.
Well, just like we said with Juju, if Williams can come on and be very valuable for him, I see Antonio's numbers then going up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we just talked about Julio. They got other weapons there
Right.
in Atlanta
Yeah.
to give Julio
I
a
mean-
spot. Who do they got in Oakland?
Tyrell
Right,
Williams is about
but
the only one at the
Crabtree,
moment.
I mean, he was a valuable player for a long time, even with Cooper there.
True, but
I mean, it can happen. It's just now you're going to want more than 80 receptions out of Antonio, but
right.
which I think is what Crabtree was averaging.
Right. I think I've got him on the cusp where I feel comfortable with him if nothing changes. but I don't know if I can really put him much higher than what I've got him at just because of the uncertainty of what we've got going on. I agree. I think I honestly would have no problem putting him at my 12 or 13 if we see nothing change going into the offseason and there's any type of question or concerns. Because the way the offense is currently set up, if they try to roll in with a Marshawn Lynch as their running back, whoever they decide to put out at tight end, I just think that this offense is going to be a repeat issue. So for touchdown purposes.
Well, it's him and Tyrell both. They're great receivers.
Yeah.
But they're learning a new system.
True.
A new quarterback. So there's going to be some learning curve there.
Right. Number 10, Amari Cooper at 312. So the last pick of the third round, which is, I think, pretty comparable. I think it's a nice spot for a guy that could be in that top 12 talk for sure. I mean, that's a really good spot to be drafted for him. So I've got him at 9. Blackburn's got him at 8, and Trimboli has him at 12. So we're kind of in the same spot where we kind of think where he's potentially at just because of what we saw once he got traded to Dallas, the potential and the opportunities there.
He blew up.
And they didn't bring in a big stud wide receiver when Beasley left. They've got him. They've got Gallup, which Gallup I think is going to be still figuring out.
They'll take a
his
step up. They got Cobb, and they brought back Witten.
Right. So the offense as a whole I think might actually have gotten better from a passing game than it was last year. So, and we saw Cooper was blowing it up once he got to Dallas. So why do you have him, I guess, as the final wide receiver one in this
I'm not
talk?
a Prescott fan, which
Well, I'm not either. We all know that.
I think it's a run first team still. And so for me, he's going to have to be a ton of volume with touchdowns in order to crack the top 10.
Which he
And there's
did.
But there's weapons now. So whatever
Okay, we're not
what you
gonna
guys just said is what's helping my well, at least I'm using it as my argument.
I get it, but to me, Cole Beasley is better than Randall Cobb.
True.
So they downgraded there. And Jason Witten, you might as well just have a brick wall sitting out in the middle of the field because that's all you're going to get.
This is possible.
So I think we seen it last year. Yeah, Zeke's numbers actually took a dip in production when Amari Cooper got there last year.
I'm thinking based on the fact that they want to pay Dak to be the future, I think that this offense, I know that Zeke's still going to command his block of touches out of the backfield.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think and it could be in Jerry's world, I think he wants, if he's going to pay a quarterback like a premium to be the future, I think he wants to see this guy let it go and let it ride and throw in a lot more than what they've seen, a lot more than what we've seen Dak do over the last couple of years. Because when the offense was humming in his rookie year, Dak was actually throwing the ball quite a bit, but Zeke was still getting plenty of opportunity and still getting the ball a ton. But to me, I just think that we're looking at a potential, a wide receiver one potential. I mean, he's a wide receiver one on the offense. I think the offense could be better in some way because Gallup's going to be better, which I think Gallup's going to dictate some coverage. Now, obviously, Amari Cooper's still going to be the main guy and still see the best coverage overall. But they moved Amari Cooper, not just the outside, but in the inside. So if they can fluently move him in and out, and Dak has got his offensive line back with Frederick in it, I think he's going to be a little bit more comfortable to hang back there in the pocket a little bit longer and throw the ball down the field.
Listen, he's still a wide receiver one. I mean, I have him
Right.
at 12, so he's still one of the top guys. It's just, like I said, I'm a huge red zone guy. He's not utilized a ton in the red zone. He only had 13 targets last year. And also, like I said, I'm just not a Prescott fan yet. Now, if everything you just said comes true, then yeah, we're looking.
I'm not a Prescott fan either, but he had the same weapons last year that he's got now, essentially.
Right.
Minus a couple offensive linemen.
Well, Dallas made the playoffs. They're going to get a playoff now schedule next year.
Right.
They're going to play a tougher. It's going to be tougher. There's a lot of things that go into this
Yeah.
True.
that make it. Amari fell into a really good situation.
Yeah, because he was like wide receiver 58 when he was in
Yeah.
Oakland, and then he ends the season wide receiver 18.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I looked at the stats from when Amari Cooper came in to Dallas to the final game of the season that Dak played with Amari Cooper. Dak was like a top 10 or top 9 quarterback. So before then, I think he was like 12 or 13. So to me, I just think Amari Cooper is going to be, I think as long as they continue to bond and grow that relationship for a wide receiver quarterback, I think they'll be all right. He's not Dez, so I think they'll be able to gel better.
Like I said, we're still talking about a wide receiver one here.
True.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Number 11, Mike Evans. He's got a 208 ADP. We've pretty close. I've got him at 10. Trevoli's got him at 9, and Blackburn's got him at 12. So still right there in that back end of that wide receiver one. And I think for me, the biggest concern is what we're going to see from Jameis Winston.
Yeah, because he's trash. The only reason Mike Evans' numbers is the way they are is because Fitzpatrick played a lot of good games last year.
Yeah. Well, he had. What did he end up being? We said
He finished wide receiver 8, but Fitzpatrick he had those string of games where he was like 400 yards, 3 touchdowns,
Right.
5 touchdowns per game. Jameis Winston came in and just was Jameis
I mean,
Winston.
if you buy into the Bruce Arians effect, then I think Mike Evans' numbers are going to go up.
I think Godwin's numbers are going to go up dramatically in that offense.
I think Godwin's going to be the biggest beneficiary of the Bruce Arians signing,
Well,
and
as
whoever
long as-
running back
long as
wise they
keep
put in
him-
there.
As long as they keep him in the slot and don't want to move him outside.
No, he'll be a
We're-
slot
we're
because they lost
rumored-
Humphreys.
Yeah, but rumor is they want to try him outside, and that's where I'm scared with Godwin.
I'm hoping Bruce Arians knows enough football that Godwin can be the guy on the inside, and then we'll just
Right.
draft somebody
Now-
as to be the outside wide receiver.
I was going to talk about Godwin when we were done. So, yeah, if he is the slot guy, he is definitely someone to be looking into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time.
All right, number 12, AJ Green. He's got a 304 ADP. I've got him at 12. Blackburn's got him at 10. Tremoli's got him 11. So right around the same spot. And I think we're all in agreement that it's just he's still the number one wide receiver
Yeah,
in that
he's
offense.
volume.
We just
Yep.
don't know what we're going to get out of the rest of the offense with Boyd, Eifert, and Uzuma, and if Andy Dalton's even going to be the quarterback this year.
I think he will be.
Yeah. Actually, I had AJ originally ranked a lot lower until news now that sounds like they want to
They
resign
want to
him.
extend him,
Yep,
yeah.
and they want to give him money, which means if you're paying a guy like that, you're going to utilize him in the offense. So that's what brought him back up for me.
And if they can rebuild their offensive line through the draft
Yeah.
and some free agency cuts like around summertime, I might move them up a little bit more.
Well, they're going to go back to when Jay Gruden was there. They're talking about that type of offense. Listen, Andy Dalton flourished in that kind of
Yes,
offense.
he
So this
did.
could be a big bump
Right.
for the entire offense as a whole, which I'm, as a Bengals fan, I'm hoping.
Yeah. All right, and then the first one or the odd man out of the top 12 for consensus is Adam Thielen at 302 ADP wise. I've got him at 13. Tremboli's got him at 15, so we're not high apparently on him. Blackburn is actually high on him at 9, at least from ranking wise how we've got him ranked. But you talked about it. He kind of proved you wrong, and I think that's kind of why you've got him in that top 10.
Well, he proved me wrong, but Filippo's gone or whatever.
True.
And Adam Thielen was the wide receiver number 1 last year for the first half of the season. He's a good possession receiver, and him and Kirk Cousins have a good thing going. I think this offense will take off in year 2, and I like Adam Thielen a lot.
Yeah, I can ultimately, and I think to me Thielen and Diggs are kind of in that same bubble still, because we're still trying to figure out which one is going to be the guy this year.
It
'Cause
depends. PPR, I'd give it to Thielen because he gets more receptions,
right?
but Diggs gets the big plays.
Big plays and touchdowns. That's the concern.
Yeah. I agree. Look, he'd be higher for me if Diggs wasn't there. The
Well,
interchangeability
absolutely.
of them, that's what scares me with
Right.
putting him any higher,
All right.
at least at the moment.
At the moment, obviously, all can change post NFL draft, off season, everything else. So, so that's all we got for today's show. I want to tell you guys thanks. If this is the first time you're joining us on the podcast, YouTube, or on DATV, we appreciate you guys joining us and hope you come back for next week's episode where we kind of discuss the tight ends, do some listener questions. And then if you are a returning listener and viewer, we appreciate you guys coming back and listening. We're going to start ramping up post this way too early rankings. We'll start ramping up heading into the NFL draft as well as post NFL draft. It's definitely going to start ramping up quickly for us. So,
Well, before we take off, I'd like to give a shout out to Aaron Smith and Jeremy Brown. They're killing the March Madness pool right now. And also thank you for Body Armor for helping us sponsor that event.
yeah,
Yeah,
man,
So.
I bombed.
That's all right.
it's Wisconsin.
It is Wisconsin. I apologize, people of Wisconsin fan base in basketball, but your team got
Your team's trash, but your cheese is good.
yeah, your team got ran off the court. So, anyways, I'm
Just lost all of Wisconsin now.
yeah, apologize.
I know
No.
they're trash.
So,
Jeez.
if you're wanting to look at the apparel that we have, we're all actually in unison today wearing our polos. But so we have that as well as apparel, as well as our articles on the website, thehateful8ff.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jpickleth8ff, at jblackburnth8ff, and at ftrimth8ff. Hit me up.
Hit us all up.
Yeah, and then as well as the podcast handle itself at the Hateful 8FF. You can follow that. That's what the main handle, but we all communicate back and forth on social media with everybody who tags us or asks us questions.
Which we love, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime you guys got questions, you can email or DM the podcast or any of us.
Right.
We'll get back with you real quick.
So, and then, I mean, it's kind of still in the baby stages, but the 2019 draft loadout, Matt Spencer is working behind the scenes to get this up and running, to get ready for your guys' draft season for those, and then we'll have that where you can purchase that for your guys' draft help. I mean, that was very successful last year. We had the people that signed up, they all made it to their championship and won. They were very successful with it, and they said the game changer was the draft. And as we talk about, and we'll get closer to the NFL draft as well as our fantasy drafts, we all talk about it, we all agree, your league is not won at your fantasy draft. However, you can lose your league at the fantasy
Absolutely.
draft, if that makes any sense for you guys listening or watching.
You just need to build a foundation.
Yeah, you need a solid foundation. Your first 3 rounds should be your solid base, and
Right.
you can trade or do whatever
Right.
throughout the season to build the rest.
I would just recommend running backs, wide receivers, have a ton of them.
Yes.
And like Blackburn just said, trade away what you don't need or what you
Right.
think is going to return value of another position that you went weak on in
It
the
just
draft.
depends on how your draft goes. If you can, go heavy on running backs or go heavy on receivers, and then if you are heavy on one or the other, you could trade for one or the other.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're only playing normally one quarterback, one tight end.
Right. And the rest are
Right. Unless you're now, if you're in a 2-quarterback set, that totally changes everything.
super
Right.
flex. Then
Yeah.
you want to go get Mahomes.
Right. Number one. So that's all we got. Next week we'll be discussing the tight ends position, which isn't the most
There's like 2
exciting.
of them.
Right. Post Gronk,
There's
there's only
3.
about 2. So, but we appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next week.